Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. Turkey is stepping deeper into the world of high-stakes diplomacy. Istanbul just hosted the first direct talks between Russia and Ukraine since the early days of the war. Also at the table, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who had just come from a NATO summit in Antalya, where Syria dominated the agenda. So how did Turkey become the meeting ground for bitter rivals, and what does it hope to accomplish? In just 1 week, President Erdogan attended a European summit in Albania, met with Ukraine's Zelenskyy, NATO's chief Mark Rutte, and oversaw a flurry of backroom diplomacy. In Istanbul, Russian, Ukrainian, and American delegations gathered for closed-door talks. Meanwhile, in southern Turkey, NATO foreign ministers met. And on the sidelines, Turkish, Syrian, and U.S. envoys quietly revived dialogue tied to recent talks between President Trump and Syria's Al-Sharaa in Riyadh. Trump says his move to lift sanctions on Syria followed direct calls with Erdogan and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And while that played out, yet another round of talks unfolded in Istanbul, this time on Iran's nuclear program, drawing in European powers. For more on Turkey's diplomatic push, joining me now from Tallinn is former U.S. Ambassador Matthew Bryza, from Ankara, former Turkish diplomat Guru Gezer, and from Uppsala, Sweden, Greg Simmons, a professor at Daffodil International University, specializing in international relations. Thanks for joining me. Now, a lot's been going on in Turkey. We had the NATO summit in Antalya. We had Erdogan, Zelenskyy in Ankara. We have the Ukrainians, the Russians, the Americans sending delegations to Istanbul for peace talks. Matt, I want to begin with you. If with all this happening simultaneously and with the arrival of Trump in November, how much do you think this is Trump impact? How much do you think this is about the strong relationship between Erdogan and Trump? Trump being a catalyst, Erdogan being like a diplomatic force multiplier for him. Do you see that cooperation really playing an important role in all these developments on flashpoint issues?
I do, definitely do. I mean, look, it's been President Erdogan's ambition for Turkey to play this mediating role for a long time. He, like so many people in the Turkish government and Turkey, view Turkey as a stabilizing force in international relations. And so this role to which it aspires is welcomed by President Donald Trump. As you also know, right, President Erdogan participated in President Trump's meeting with the new Syrian leader Al-Sharaa and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman the other day in Riyadh. So President Trump is making a point to embrace President Erdogan, sort of metaphorically and diplomatically, and very openly to welcome Turkey's mediation role. So yeah, I think Trump himself is he's a catalyst for diplomatic change. Some would say for better, some might say for worse.
Gudru, when you look at the relationship between Erdogan and Trump, it was already closer, but it seems to be getting closer. And a lot of the flashpoint issues that are on Trump's plate are also issues that Erdogan's been working towards. Syria for over a decade now. Erdogan's been involved with war in Ukraine since the beginning. Do you see Trump's support for Erdogan as strengthening Erdogan's position at the table?
Well, certainly. I also want to add the fact that, to Ambassador Bryza's point, that both leaders are pragmatic leaders and solution-oriented leaders. And obviously, President Trump needs allies to solve certain issues. And when we look at where Turkey is located, it is at the center of the ongoing conflicts now in Ukraine and in the Middle East. And Turkey, in that sense, plays a key role. And the fact that the two leaders, from the onset of the second term of Trump, established a good line communication, and not on the leaders level, but also on the technical level and ministerial level, we see that the Trump administration is willing to work with Turkey on several files, as you've mentioned, on the Ukrainian file, the Middle East, Syria, the Caucasus, the Iran file, and even cooperate in areas such as Central Asia and Africa. And that, of course, does strengthen President Erdogan's position at the table and on the ground as well.
Greg, with everything going on in Turkey, let's start with Istanbul because I think the major headline is the Russia-Ukraine peace talks. What's your expectation from these talks? I mean, what type of result do you think could come out? Are you expecting some type of peace? Are you expecting it to fizzle out into nothing or somewhere in between?
Well, there are going to be no results from this immediately. This is an initial meeting, so therefore it'll be very unusual. The heads of state only come in when the deal has been more or less settled what to agree on, and that hasn't been established at all. You see the differences. So I don't see this leading to anywhere in a hurry. I think it's going to take quite a lot of time because you've got not only the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, but you've got the tensions between Zelenskyy and Trump. And you've got these other factors which absolutely complicate things and make a reasoned and plausible diplomatic solution rather problematic in the short and maybe even the medium term.
Mm-hmm. Matt, Zelenskyy was in Ankara meeting with Erdogan about a month and a half ago, a not so stellar White House visit by the Ukrainian president. It seemed that Erdogan and Zelenskyy are in lockstep. When we saw them talking, they seem to have a lot of bilateral interests that are meeting up. How important was it for Zelenskyy to be in Ankara meeting with Erdogan before these delegation talks?
Well, I mean, it was important for even a different reason, which is that Zelenskyy was, in a way, calling President Putin's bluff and actually showing up to have direct talks, Zelenskyy hoped, with President Putin to reach a ceasefire. And so having the opportunity then to coordinate with President Erdogan, I mean, was something that Zelenskyy smartly seized. And as you say, Yusuf, yeah, Ukraine and Turkey now are really on the same page. You know, earlier in the war, when it looked like Ukraine was making progress on the battlefield and felt that it needed to repel the Russian initial attacks, it wasn't as eager for a ceasefire. Now, both sides need a ceasefire. And it's President Erdogan who was all along saying it's senseless, don't fight, when both sides wanted to continue the fighting. And so I think it's exactly what you say, that Zelenskyy and President Erdogan are on the same page. President Erdogan is absolutely clear, he has been from the very beginning, to call for the restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity, to condemn the invasion or the annexation of Crimea as well, even while keeping the lines of communication open with President Putin and avoiding sanctions on Russia, which, of course, helped President Erdogan broker with the UN the so-called grain deal back in July 2022.
Yura, I love the Mickey Mouse coffee cup, by the way, but you're not going to get a tough question. Putin-Erdogan, a relationship that right now seems to be very important, especially for NATO, because probably the only NATO leader that can have direct contact with Putin, probably aside from Orban and maybe in the future Trump, but that relationship that Erdogan's built over the past decade or two, really important and an asset to NATO, it seems. But it's also something he's been criticized for by the Western camp, especially regarding sanctions, regarding bilateral trade and whatnot. Do you think Erdogan right now is feeling a lot more justified in building that relationship and maintaining it?
Definitely. And by the way, I wasn't aware that my cup was actually seen. But you're very right, Yusuf, because Turkey at a certain point was labeled as a Trojan horse inside of NATO because Turkey kept on engaging with Russia and not complying with third-party sanctions. But now we see the importance of the ongoing dialogue with Russia and how Turkey has become once again an honest broker, and that both sides, both warring parties, trust Turkey to actually, initiate the talks and somehow find a common ground for a ceasefire and hopefully for peace negotiations. And as you've mentioned in the beginning of the program, the informal NATO foreign ministers meeting took place in Antalya, and the NATO Secretary General himself actually said that Turkey was playing a pivotal role in being able to get the sides together. And I'm happy finally that West is the strategic choice Turkey made when the war broke out to continue to engage with Russia.
Guru mentioned that there was this perception that Turkey was a Trojan horse inside of NATO. There was actually hashtags kick Turkey out of NATO and whatnot. Greg, I want to ask you right now, when you look at NATO, you look at the NATO armies, you look at the talk of a new European security architecture. You're in Sweden right now, a country that just recently joined NATO with Turkey's blessing. How do you view Turkey inside of NATO and its responsibility to European security?
Well, Turkey proved to be one of the few adults in the room because they kept their interests. They asserted themselves as being a subject and not an object of international relations. And this is their strength. This is why now Turkey can play its role as a bridge between the global north and global south. If they folded to that pressure, then it would be bad for Turkey's interests and security. I mean, Europe is in severe turmoil because, with the exceptions of perhaps Hungary and Slovakia, they bent to the pressure. And the results are clear. So Turkey kept its dignity and kept its interests and also kept its position as being a bridge.
Mm-hmm. Matt, I think the second biggest headline this week is probably Trump ending Syria sanctions. And Trump said that this happened after phone calls with Erdogan and talking with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Now, in 2014, Obama partnered with the YPG, forming the Syrian Democratic Forces, a group that Turkey views as tremendously hostile, straining the U.S.-Turkey relationship. Is what's happening in Syria right now, and especially the lifting of sanctions, is Trump pulling a complete U-turn, and are the Turks and the Americans converging with interests and with objectives regarding Syria?
Well, it's certainly a U-turn with regard to the former U.S. support for the YPG, which, as you may recall, way back when, at the beginning of the war and during the Obama administration, then Secretary of Defense Ash Carter admitted in testimony before the Senate Armed Services Foreign Relations Committee that the YPG is the PKK and is a terrorist organization. So, of course, President Trump has reversed that, but he had been moving in that direction even during his first term, as you'll recall, when he pulled the U.S. out of northeast Syria and then reduced the U.S. footprint to Deir el-Zor in the area in the more southern area. He has styled himself as a peacemaker. That was a central theme of his second inaugural address. And so I think he believes that this lifting of sanctions on Syria enables peace to begin to be substantiated and sustained, because with those sanctions, there was never going to be not only any investment, but no financial transactions were possible because Syria switched off the SWIFT system, as is Russia, by the way. So Trump he's pushing not only for peace in Syria, but a sustainable peace. And the next phase that will be very interesting will be how will Washington encourage, and will it even fund, any of the investment required to reconstruct Syria? But for now, as you well know, the YPG has folded into the Syrian military at Al-Shara's request and demand, rightfully. And the PKK itself has now announced it's disbanding. So we're in a new world, partly because of Trump's initiatives, but also because of the dynamic on the ground in Syria.
Mm-hmm. In 2019, there was a partial withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria. It looks like Trump wants to complete that now. When he's making that decision, Guru, is he depending on the Turks to ensure the security of that region? I mean, he did have talks with Al-Sharaa, and they talked about Daesh and Syria taking over. But when you look at the region, the number one ally, the second biggest army in NATO, obviously Trump's going to want to probably see Turkey give some guarantees as well. So do you think that Trump's thinking, okay, I can leave Syria to the Turks, they got my back there?
Yes, well, he's actually said this a couple of months ago because, he believes that Turkey is a key actor in what's going on in Syria. And Turkey has also, on several occasions, that they themselves are willing to, if necessary, take control of the Daesh prisons. And Turkey is also a coalition member of the coalition to fight against ISIS, and Trump has other interests, other priorities, mainly China and containing China. So he needs reliable regional actors to solve the ossified problems in the Middle East. And obviously, Turkey stands out because, as you said, yes, there are other actors in the region, like the Gulf countries and so on, but Turkey has a strong army, and Turkey is a NATO ally and a good partner of the US, although we've had our ups and downs over the decades, but time and again, our relations withstood all the challenges. So, and Trump sees this. And both Turkey and Syria have been giving the message that they themselves can solve certain issues pertaining to the ISIS, the Daesh threat in Syria. And so I think that, yes, first of all, Trump wants to give a chance to Al-Sharaa, but he also is relying on Turkey's support in the region.
Mhm. Greg, the Europeans seem to act a little quicker than the Americans with the new realities in Syria, lifting the sanctions, even if it was temporary, could be extended. Do you see Turkey and Europe cooperating, especially in Syria? Is that an area where Brussels and Ankara see eye to eye?
I'm not sure if they see eye to eye exactly, but there may be some common interests. But I mean, this is a matter of convenience for them. This is very transactional. So I don't see this as a softening of relations or a bettering of relations. It's just merely the pragmatic thing to do in the interim, because there are geopolitical priorities that are rapidly changing, both for the EU, the US reorientation, as said by your previous speaker, now more getting directed towards China, because I mean the US doesn't have the same power, capability, and projection that it had at the end of the Cold War. I mean, it's a state or a hegemon which is in relative decline. So, I mean, this is a reflection of these realities starting to creep in.
Mm-hmm. Matt, I think the most delicate of all these situations is Israel-Gaza, especially for Trump. It's something that Erdogan wants to see resolved immediately. He's been very vocal about it. We're seeing some distance between Trump and Netanyahu during the press conference, not visiting Israel or not meeting with Netanyahu during this Gulf tour, which many people expected he would have. Is there space for Erdogan and Trump to be able to work together on ending the fighting in Gaza, a more permanent ceasefire there? Or is that something that Trump's kind of concerned about stepping into due to domestic political influence of Israel?
No, I think Trump has taken some remarkable steps in distancing the U.S. from Israel recently. I mean, just think about it. Yusuf, in your lifetime, in my lifetime, the U.S. mantra was never negotiate with terrorists. In this case, in the hostage release of Mr. Alexander, the U.S. was negotiating directly with Hamas. Directly with Hamas and without Israel about a war that Israel is waging in Israel and in Gaza. It's an astounding shift. And so even though Trump isn't vocally going to attack Netanyahu by not only not attending or stopping in Israel, but through what I just mentioned in terms of negotiating with Hamas. And remember when Netanyahu last visited the White House in the Oval Office, Trump blindsided him by announcing direct U.S. talks with Iran on the nuclear program of Iran. So, yeah, I think given how strongly President Erdogan has condemned Israel, now Trump is coming around to distancing from Israel, so that removes an obstacle in U.S.-Turkish relations for the U.S. to embrace a Turkish role in Israel-Gaza. But B, I don't think Netanyahu will ever accept Turkey's direct mediation, but Turkey can help deliver can help deliver Hamas. And in the beginning of the war, you may recall that it was recognized even by Hamas that Turkey's role was crucial in getting some hostages released, especially from Thailand. So President Erdogan, I think, wants to play that mediating role, but he won't be able to have any practical positive impact on the Israelis, but he could on Hamas.
No, I do agree with you because Trump is showing a level of strategic autonomy regarding Israel, probably not seen since JFK. Gudru, how much help could Erdogan expect from Trump regarding Israel? I mean, do you think that Erdogan could get what he wants or the complete support that he wants from Trump?
No, because the tradition, although Trump at times breaks from tradition, but the traditional foreign policy of the U.S. Entails a support for Israel regardless. And although the two leaders, I mean, Trump has distanced himself from Netanyahu, that doesn't mean that he will break from tradition in supporting Israel or supporting Israel's cause, because look, during his visit to the Gulf, he didn't really talk much about Gaza. He definitely did not talk about a two-state solution. And to a certain point, actually disappointed that most of the Arab leaders didn't mention Gaza or Palestine during their talks. I don't think that there will be a major shift in American U.S. foreign policy towards Israel, and I don't really see a two-state solution, or at least any kind of solution that would somehow, meet the needs of the region, or Turkey for that matter, because Trump has a completely different notion of the situation on the ground in Gaza. He said on several occasions that he wants to turn it into a Riviera. So he sees that land as like a land for tourism, not really maybe knowing the historical background of the conflict and how complicated it is to find a solution. So how much would his policies meet the needs or the demands of Erdogan? I am hugely skeptical.
Okay. Greg, let's flip the other side of the coin to Iran. Nuclear talks also happening. There's actually a lot of, I don't know, we can call it progress, but a lot of developments on that front. And it's actually being overshadowed by Ukraine talks and what's been happening in Syria, but no less important. What type of agreement or what type of development are you expecting from Iran talks?
Well, it seems that Trump wants to revisit a revamped JCPOA, perhaps. But what Iran want is their ability for a civil nuclear program, which under international law is allowed, and which Trump and, of course, Israel are trying to pressure against. So this seems to be the main sticking point. And then you have the issue, not only the relations between US and Iran, which have become much more functional given the events around Gaza, but also it's a bit more problematic to coerce them when there are so many fires around the world for the US to attend to. I mean, not only Ukraine, but Gaza, Yemen, and what we have in the South China Sea, Taiwan. So I think that there will also perhaps be the influence, because Iran's relations both with China and with Russia are vastly different than they were back when the original JCPOA was inked.
That's all the time we have for today. Greg, Matt, Gudru, thanks for a great conversation. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.